Hello everybody. In the previous session we covered the introduction to international business communication. We talked about what you will be learning in this course and what you can expect to be doing or what you can expect to have learned by the end of this course. And what we talked about was the enhancement of sensitivity to your environments. This course does not aim to give you any patches. This course does not aim to give you any formulae. I will not give you 5 steps to effective presentations or 15 steps to effective negotiations or 12 steps to effective presentations. But what I will really do in this course is I will help you enhance your sensitivity to your environments so that whenever you are faced with a unique stimulus coming from your environment, you are able to deal with it. And that is what we will do through this course. We also talked about the significance of this course and how it is going to help you in your later lives. So, let us revise a little bit. The first thing we will revise is how does communication happen. In this we talked about the transmission of messages, we talked about the transmission of content. We also talked about the fact that meanings do not get transmitted. Meanings are interpreted. Meanings form, give the message its shape and structure. The content is transmitted as it is, but the meanings depend upon the interpretations of the sender of the message and the receiver of the message. And in this context, we talked about Berlow's SMCR model, which really deals with the importance of context in the sender's environment and in the receiver's environment. It also talks about the interpretation of the communication channel by the sender and by the receiver. So, this is really important. Context is a very important part of any type of communication. Context really determines how effective communication is. Communication is the interpretation and the effectiveness of communication really lies in the hands of the receiver. This is one tool where the user of that tool or the person who is sending, in this context the person who is designing and sending the message, does not really have complete control over the kind of meaning that is transmitted. It is the receiver of the message who decides how effective the message is. It is the receiver who has all the power here. So, this is really a very difficult tool to get used to develop your proficiency in, but it is possible. You communicate 24/7. Okay? We talked about Berlow's SMCR model. S stands for sender, M for message, C for channel and R for receiver. And Berlow's model talks about the importance of the elements or the constituents of each of these parts of the transmission of a message. We also talked about who communicates. We talked about one-on-one communication, one-to-many communication, depending, and in intrapersonal communication where we talk to ourselves, we communicate with ourselves in our own minds. We also talked about why business communication is important. Why do we study business communication? We talked about the paper by Squires, which deals with what managers do and how they do what they do and why they do what they do and what affects what they do. So, this is really what communication, it also depends on the kind of messages that are transmitted during this process that have an impact on the way the business is conducted. We talked about why intercultural communication in business. We talked about the importance of intercultural communication. We talked about the history of intercultural communication, where it began, who started it, why it was considered important. We talked about the royals being trained in intercultural communication to help them deal with royals from other countries or communities or boundaries. So, all this was discussed in the previous lecture. The bottom line in this course is and the bottom line in good management is knowing what is fundamental to success and what is not. And this is what Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert Comics, talks about. A good manager just goes out and gets the job done with as optimal use of resources as possible, and that is really the bottom line. And the operational word here is also ethical. So, a good manager just goes out and gets the job done with as optimal and as ethical a use of resources as possible. And in order to get the job done, one needs to express oneself to people and make oneself understood to people, one who one may or may not share a background and common understanding with. And this really is intercultural communication competence. Such a simple concept that we have put into these big words, but all it really means is our effectiveness in dealing with people who may not share a common background with us, who may not share a common comfort zone with us. Now, some definitions in this area. Culture. This is the most comprehensive definition of culture that I found in all my training on intercultural communication, and this definition was given by Porter and Samovar. And according to Porter and Samovar, some of the gurus, two of the gurus in intercultural communication, in culture is the deposit of knowledge, what we know, experience, what we've gone through, beliefs, values, attitudes, meanings that we draw from similar experiences, hierarchies, social hierarchies, professional hierarchies, religion, notions of time, standard time versus stretchable time, roles, masculine, feminine, the different hats we wear. In the office, I may be in the Indian context especially, even when I am here, even when I am talking to you all, at the back of my mind somewhere I am also thinking about my role as a daughter, what all I have to do for my family. Okay? So, all those things are going on in my mind at the time when I am talking to you. I try and not let them take priority when I am teaching you. But in my class, if somebody got a call from his or her family, and if it was an emergency, I would really not mind letting the person go out, because it is really considered important. We are social beings. So, we have these understandings of our culture. I know that even when I am working and I am doing my best at work, it is impossible for me to dissociate my role as a family person from my role as a professional. So, that is the roles, this is the notion of roles, spatial relations, concepts of the universe, and material objects and possessions acquired by a group of people in the course of generations through individual and group striving. It is not a one-time thing. It is things that we have believed in, things that we have thought about, things that we have understood, things that we have followed, things that we see other people in our communities follow over time, over generations. So many times we say, I am doing the same things. This is the way it has been done in my family for ages. This is the way my mother used to do it. This is the way my grandmother used to do it. This is the way my father used to do it. My understanding of a professional life comes from what I have heard my father and grandfather say. So, these values, even related to the professional life, come from there. I have seen them, and as far as personal life is concerned, yes, I am standing here, but there are certain things that my family requires me to do, and I will make adjustments, I will fit them into my professional schedule and do them like that. These are things that we have known for ages. Now, in some other cultures, it is considered very inappropriate to mix personal and professional lives. It's all right. If that happens, it is perfectly all right. We are trained about what is professional, what is not professional, what is right, what is wrong. after going through this course, you will realize that everybody is right from their own point of view. You just have to understand the other person's point of view and accept what they are doing and try and understand it. Now, it does not mean that one should not adopt to the professional life one is a part of. So, if you are in a culture where personal and professional lives need to be separated, by all means please do it. But if you are in a culture like ours, or in what we call as a high context culture, we will talk about the contextuality of cultures in a different lecture. But if you are in a culture that does not really, that takes a person in entirety, that takes the person's entire background, entire culture, entire understanding of roles and the different positions one is in into account, and looks at what the person has achieved within those limitations, then one needs to make certain adjustments, and that is why we say that this is all cultural. Culture helps us recognize difference and not necessarily classify it as good or bad. That is one good thing that comes out of this class. After you have gone through this class, I hope that you will learn to classify things as comfortable or uncomfortable at best. I hope that you will learn to accept things as different, right within their own context, maybe different from what you have learned to believe in. So, that is why I thought I would talk to you about culture. Culture is a lot of things. Culture is a lot of things that we are exposed to, a lot of things that we believe in through generations. Okay? Culture is manifested through artifacts, concepts and behaviors. Dr. Mary Jane Collier says that we express culture, the culture is manifested, it is expressed, it takes some form of tangible shape through our artifacts, through what we believe in about certain things, through the concepts we have of things around us and our behaviors. I will give you a small example. In India, it is considered appropriate, if you want to be really polite to someone, it is considered appropriate to address a person as G, to add the word G. So, even if you are at work, instead of saying haan, you will say Hanji, which means yes, and I do not know of an equivalent in English. Or if you are addressing a person who is superior in age or in position, you will take the person's name and add a G to it. Okay? So, this is a behavior that we have learnt to believe in. You may not feel very polite, but just to express your politeness, just to be culturally correct, we use the word G to appear to be polite. Concepts, what we believe in about our environment. We have been taught to believe that education is sacred. Again, in some cultures in India, in many cultures, I think I can safely say that, in many cultures in India, it is considered disrespectful to sit with the soles of your feet towards an older person or towards a stack of books. Many of us will feel uncomfortable jumping over books. This is something that has been drummed into us. This is a concept. Books are like God. Education is like God, and I will not sit with the soles of my feet facing God. You will not keep your prayer area where the soles of your feet are showing. You will not put your book rack at the foot of your bed. So, that is just cultural. It does not mean that people who do that are bad people. It just means that they have believed something different about education, about books, about elders. They are not disrespectful. They have a different way of expressing their respect. You may find this, some of you may find this strange, but there are people who would put their books and shoes, as long as the shoes are clean, or in the same bag. And many of us in Indian cultures would feel very, very uncomfortable doing that. So, this is a behavior, this is a concept that we have learnt. The concept is books are sacred. Behavior is, if it is anything sacred, if it is something that needs to be respected or someone who needs to be respected, I will not show the soles of my feet. Why? Because the soles of my feet are the dirtiest part of my body. So I will, it means as if it is symbolic of trampling over someone, and I will not do that. Okay. So that is a concept. And artifacts, what we carry. Now what I am wearing here, this is called a dupatta. This pink piece of cloth is a dupatta. Indians would recognize it. Anyone who's outside will probably not recognize it. Or anyone who's not exposed to the Indian culture would probably not recognize it. It would be considered improper in a traditional or in a conservative system in India for me to come for this sort of a lecture in a sleeveless shirt, but fully clothed with a dupatta. Now the dupatta is pink colored, and if they can focus the camera on this, it has some golden print on it. Okay. And this golden print with pink is considered to be festive in many Western cultures. So if I went dressed like this to a class in a Western culture, it would not be considered appropriate. But in India, it is considered part of who we are to wear bright clothes. In fact, if I wore very drab clothes, or I shouldn't say drab, but very plain dark clothes, or very pastel shades, clothes with pastel shades, people may misinterpret it to mean that I am in some sort of mourning, or I am sad, or whatever. So culture is manifested through artifacts. In India, this kind of a combination at work is very acceptable. I am not talking about the multinational companies here. In a traditional Indian setup, for a teacher to wear bright colors like this, it is perfectly all right. So it is a manifestation of culture through the artifacts that I have. I am wearing these silver bangles here. Okay. So this has some sort of a religious significance, but it is not considered a piece of jewelry. It is just an artifact that I am carrying, and people consider it okay. All right. Similarly, Hindu women wear a Mangal Sutra around their neck after they are married. It's a necklace made of black beads with golden or silver thread, depending on who the person is and what they feel, with a little locket over here, and I am sure they have special names for it. That is considered okay. Hindu women will have sindoor in their parting. They will have a bindi. They will have this little dot on their forehead, signifying their marital status. In the Western cultures, it is a golden band. Especially in Christian cultures, it is a golden band on this finger. So that is all a cultural manifestation. What is considered culturally appropriate? Now, according to Dean Barland, every culture expresses its purpose and conducts its affairs through the medium of communication. This is where we come in. This is where this course comes in. Culture forms part of our context. Culture forms part of who I am and how I design every message that I send into the environment. And I express that culture sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously, through the way I communicate. According to Barland, every culture expresses its purpose and conducts its affairs through the medium of communication. What other medium would be there for anyone to express anything? You may know whatever you know. You could be an expert in your field, but unless you make yourself understood to people who can use your expertise is not really worth anything. And in order to express your expertise, you need to communicate. Communication and expression go hand in hand. Okay. Intracultural and intercultural communication. Intracultural communication is communication with people from the same culture. Intercultural communication is communication with people from a different culture, and we defined culture in a previous slide. Culture is a it is a collection of values, beliefs, artifacts, notions of time, spatial relations, what is considered appropriate, what is considered not appropriate, what do I do before I come here. Some of us say our prayers early in the morning, that could be cultural. It does not necessarily have to be a Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, Parsi trait. It just it is a different kind of culture. So, it is what we do, the kind of background we have shared with people over generations, and communication with people who have a different background, who have a different system of living is called intercultural communication. Now, sources of difference. I am going to spend a considerable amount of time on this slide just to demonstrate how different we can be. According to several people, I collected this information from just 3 papers, but this could be a lot more things could be added to this, and the list could be really endless. So, I have just taken the broad categories to demonstrate how we can be different. We could be different racially. When I talk about race, I am not really talking about nationalities. I am talking about maybe the Caucasians, Afrikaners, Dravidians, Mongoloids, so all these different races, Aryans, okay. We are different racial groups, and that make us very different. Races not only determine our physical structure, races also determine the internal parts of our body. You will be surprised to know, and the anthropologists in the audience would probably agree with me when I say that the size of your red blood cells is also determined anthropologically. Different races have different sizes of the RBCs. So, what is normal size of a red blood corpuscle for a Caucasian may not be, the same norms could not be followed for the size of the red blood corpuscles, say in Afrikaners or in Dravidians. Okay. So, it is that differentiated, and these things in turn have an impact on how we think, how our bodies, how our internal environment treats us. And when the internal environment is different, then the signals we send out into the external environment are also different. Now, these things internally have evolved over time because of the places we live in, because the places our ancestors have lived in, our bodies have adapted. But when we move to a different place, our bodies that are meant for one kind of physical environment are put into a different place, and in that place the way they react to that environment becomes different, and those signals, very subtle signals start going out into the environment. So, it is a continuous process. We could be following different religions, okay, and this I do not think I need to explain. Hindus have different, there are different sects of Hindus, there are different factions of Hindus. But Hindus are different from Sikhs. Sikhs also have different categories. People follow not very different, but somewhat differentiated methods of prayer. Islam has its own sects, Christianity has its own different diversifications, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, I mean you name it, So, we are different, and all these religions have such an impact on the way we treat our environment. All religions teach us to respect our environment, but they teach us different methods of expressing our respect for our environment and the fellow beings. Ideology, whether we believe in collectivist ideology or individualistic ideology, whether we believe in satisfying the needs of one person or of the community as a whole, what we think about our environment and what we think about ourselves in the environment could be different. Again, all these things are interrelated. If you look at this entire list, all of these things are interlinked with each other. Race could be a determinant in religion. Religion definitely is a determinant in ideology. Nationality could be linked to religion in some cases, or it could be linked to ideology and ethnicity and so on. Okay. Nationality typically deals with geopolitical boundaries. Our notions of geopolitical boundaries, the passports we hold, that is a nationality. I was born in India, so I am an Indian national. Okay. Now, if I decide to move to another part of the world and give up my Indian nationality, then I will become a different national. It does not take away whatever I have believed about India since my childhood. It does not take away my roots, it does not take away my history, I just get a different passport. Okay. Ethnicity. Ethnicity comes from your community that you consider yourself a part of. And I keep giving personal examples because that is something I relate to a lot, and that is something that you will also be able to relate to as far as your own lives are concerned. So, ethnicity, I belong to a Punjabi family. Now, I have never lived in Punjab. I grew up in Himachal, but I belong to a Punjabi family. I am an Indian. I am an Indian by nationality and by ethnicity. Now, ethnicity in say we very often talk about the expatriate Indians living in the United States. We very often talk about the expatriate Indians living in the UK. I know of several families that moved 3 or 4 generations ago to Africa, then they went to the UK, then a couple of generations lived in the UK, and now some of them are settled in the US or Canada. And this 3rd or 4th generation of people that are settled in the US or Canada now have never been to India. None of their relatives are in India, but they still wear Indian clothes, they still go to Indian functions. If it is a Gujarati family, they will enjoy Navratri with a lot of gusto. They will wear chaniya choli and they will learn how to do garba, and they will try and understand Gujarati at least at home. Even if they don't, they will understand, they will learn to appreciate Indian food. If it's a Punjabi family, they will learn how to, you know, they will most probably enjoy aloo paranthas, and they will learn how to wear a salwar kameez. So, all these things I have seen this with my own eyes, and this does happen. So, ethnicity is something that really determines what our families, what our parents and grandparents pass on to us. And I have seen these families telling their children, look, you are an Indian and you must behave like this. Okay? And it is not that common, but in the Western cultures, at least in some families I have not seen this very much, but in Indian families that have married into other expatriate Indian families or resident Indian families, this thing is still carrying on. And even after 3 or 4 generations of not visiting the country, those ethnic roots are still somewhere in their minds. So, they will learn how to dance the Indian way, and they will celebrate Diwali and Navratri and all those things. Okay. Appearance. Appearance is something that again makes us very, very different from each other. We may try and categorize human beings into pretty looking and ugly looking and this and that. But if we look closely, every human being looks different from the other person. Even identical twins have some distinguishing features, and our appearance says a lot about us. Okay? Who decides? There is somebody who decides that shorter hair is not as pretty in some cultures. In some cultures, very long hair is not considered very pretty. In some cultures, being fair is considered very, very appropriate. In some other cultures, being dark is considered prettier. You know, in some cultures, having the completely clear set of teeth, or you know, not real, I mean, buck teeth are considered inappropriate. So, all those things are there. In some cultures, big eyes are considered to be very pretty. In some other cultures, smaller eyes are considered pretty. So, you know, all those things are there, and these are physical appearances that make us very different from each other, and we have certain notions about people who have different kinds of physical appearance. So, women with long hair, if you are an Indian woman traditionally, then you would have long hair, dark hair. So, if my hair is slightly on the lighter side, people will say there is something wrong. You are an Indian, so even if my hair is brown, they will put it down as black, because an Indian woman is supposed to have a thick mane of hair and dark hair and long hair. So, all those things. So, we have our own notions. So, if my hair is shorter, they will say you are westernized. And personal artifacts is another one, what I wear. Now, if I am in the West and if I wear this, then they will say you are too traditional. If I am in India and I wear jeans in a traditional setup, then they will not like it. So, what I carry, what I wear, how I carry myself, all those things, personal artifacts actually specifically refers to what I carry on my person, what I wear, what I use, whether I use a black leather bag or whether I use this brightly colored bag with tassels and all of that stuff. Now, as a professor, as a teacher, as an academician, I have the liberty to dress a little casually. It is considered acceptable. A khadi kurta with jeans is supposed to be the most appropriate dress for professors. You know, it gives us that look, and with glasses, it makes me look really, really brilliant. So, I don't know if it does, but that's the notion that if you have glasses, if you're a professor, you better have glasses. So, what you carry on your person determines how people perceive you. The next thing on this list is body structure, which is height, weight ratio. Now, if you look through literature, you will realize that a tall person is considered to be more professional, more smarter and more adept at handling his or her situation, or more adept at handling your work than a shorter person is. Taller people are traditionally considered to be more charismatic. Height weight ratio, you know, weight, how fat or thin you are. A person who is physically fit most of the times gives an impression that he or she will take care of your work much better than a person who is like me, chubby. Okay. So, people, and the reasoning behind that could be that if you can't take care of your own self, how will you take care of somebody else's work? Now, people who are like me on the heavier side will probably say that I couldn't take care of myself because I was so busy with my work, but that is not the message that goes across in the first go. So, in the first go, if you have a good proportionate height weight ratio, people think that you will be able to take care of their work much better. And the body structure gives us an impression about the kind of person the other person may be. Behavioral style. I like to laugh loudly. That is a characteristic of Punjabis. Punjabis are known to be gregarious, and my apologies to Punjabis who don't feel that way in the audience, but that is typically what we are known for. And some cultures consider this crude and inappropriate. So, you know what I say, I am supposed to be very controlled, and as I grow older, I am not supposed to laugh as loudly. In some traditional conservative cultures, it is considered inappropriate for me to laugh very loudly. And there are people like me who believe that if you laugh loudly, big deal, you know. So, but all these things are part of your behavioral style. How do you introduce yourselves to people? How do you mingle with people? Do you take the lead in making new friends when you go to a party? When you are in a business setting, are you aggressive? Are you respectful? Do you always say please? How do you handle your environment? Are you outgoing? Are you reserved? So, all those are behavioral styles that make us very different from each other. The next thing on the list is gender. This is self-explanatory. The traditional differences between men and women. I am not a feminist. I am not a feminist by a long shot, but I do believe that every human being is entitled to an equal amount of respect, irrespective of their gender. There are traditional roles for men and women, and if men stray away from those roles, people have a different notion of them, and if women stray away from those roles, people have a different notion of them. And these roles were traditionally accepted because of the different physical capabilities of men and women. Physiologically, men and women are different. Physiologically, their bodies are able to do different things. Men are sturdier, they are stronger, so they are able to carry heavier loads, and when humankind was evolving, the outdoor activities were taken care of by men for the simple reason that they were physically able to do that. And slowly when that happened, the women who could do that were also not accepted into those roles, because most of the women were busy looking after the homes. Physically, if you look at physical strength, I mean, a man of the same age eating the same kind of food would grow up to be taller and would have more muscle power than a woman. And that is what made us different, and that is how these roles got classified, and then people started taking them at face value. And now, of course, things are changing now, people are becoming more aware, they are accepting a lot more things, but these differences still continue to exist, and our perceptions are based on what men can and cannot do, should and should not be doing, and what women should and should not be doing and can and cannot do. The next thing is sexual identity. This is a very, very sensitive topic. Sexual identity is a taboo subject in many societies, and homosexuality is slowly getting accepted in a country like India, but we don't like to talk about it. In the Western countries, it is a part of life. Person's sexual preferences are not supposed to have a bearing on how the person is treated. It's a very personal matter, it's a very private matter, but we have, if we come to know in conservative cultures, homosexuality is considered to be taboo, it is considered to be something that happens to other people, it is considered to be something that should not be spoken about. And there are reasons for it, there are social reasons for it. But these notions of a person's sexual identity, this also includes promiscuity, this also includes premarital relationships or extramarital relationships. So all those things are in this category. It also includes the notions of sexual behavior in different cultures, and how these notions are treated, and what is acceptable and what is not. And those are the things that help us form our opinions about people. Okay. The next thing on this list is age. If I came here with a strand of white hair and another strand of grey hair, and my hair tied back into a bun and looking maybe 15 or 20 years older, then many of my students would take me much more seriously than they do today. They take me seriously, I hope they do. But people would have a lot more respect for a person who is perceived to be having more experience. Okay? So, if I looked younger, or if I had shorter hair, and if I looked, say, maybe in my mid 20s, many people listening to me may not take me very seriously. You know, the minute you see the word professor attached to someone, you assume that the person has to be older, has to be slightly boring, and has to have some white hair in order to be called a professor. Fair enough. When one becomes a full professor, that is probably what the person looks like. But age is also associated with a lot of experience, and the way the person learns to interact with his or her environment based on that experience. And this is what makes us different from each other. You could have a colleague who is older, and depending on the culture you are in, again I keep using this phrase because this is really, really sensitive. You know, as you go along in this course, you will realize how sensitive an issue this is. So, you could have a colleague who is older than you, and in some cultures you may not want to address that older colleague by first name ever, because you want to demonstrate respect. And even if the older colleague goofs up on some issues or somehow misses a point, I should not say goofs up, but somehow misses a point while doing something, you let the thing slide just out of respect. So and so is older than me, how it will be very difficult for me to pinpoint that this person is wrong, and unless and until whatever this person has done is really very negatively affecting my work, I will not say anything, as opposed to a person who is younger than you in age. So whether we accept it or not, it happens in real life. People who are younger in age are accept being treated like according to their age. So, you know, you could probably be more blunt with a person who's younger in age, and again this is cultural. In some cultures this would be a big deal, but we do perceive people who are older in age to be at a different level. We expect different things from them, we treat them slightly differently. Family constellation is another source of difference. Many of us assume that people coming from joint families will be more adaptable, will be more adjusting than people coming from nuclear families. And if the person is a single child, we assume that the person has never learned to share. That's the general assumption we have, which is wrong. Many times it is wrong. But we assume that a person who lived in a joint family, who always had people in and out of their house, must be used to sharing a lot more than a person coming from a nuclear family. And this also includes our notions about single parent families. We have certain opinions, you know, all of us have certain notions about single parent families. Many of us, while forming these notions, might be taking the struggles or the limitations single parent families would have had, and many of us may not think about those things, you know. So, but we do have certain notions about the different kinds of family structure a person is coming from and how that would impact the person's interpersonal behavior at work and in other kinds of relationships. The next thing on the list is socioeconomic status. We assume that a person who has grown up with a lot of money will not be able to survive in difficult circumstances. We assume that a person coming from a wealthy family will not be able to deal with limited resources. So we have certain notions and we test these people on these notions when we interact with them. And we form certain opinions. We also assume that a person who is not coming from a wealthy family may not know how to deal with people who are very well off. Many times that notion does exist, and we test this. We assume that a person who does not belong to a high socio-economic status would probably not know how to deal with a large number of resources when they are presented to this person, which is an incorrect notion. But those are the kinds of biases that creep into our behavior when we deal with people. Okay? This is just a common thing. I must admit that whatever I have told you is not part of how I behave with people. These are just observations I have made. I am a student of human behavior. So I have made these observations in my interactions, and I think many of you would agree with me when I say that these are the things we observe in our environments, and these are the things that make us different from each other. Now, when you look at this list, socio-economic status can be linked to personal artifacts. Socio-economic status can be also linked to maybe appearance. You know, whether you are able to afford a gym or not, whether you are able to go to a gym or not. So, all these things, socio-economic status could also be linked to a person's behavioral style. Okay? The next thing on the list is educational systems. We could be different educationally. In India, again, it is a popular notion that the state board of school education does not provide education of a quality as good as the central boards, and that is a popular notion. Okay? The IITs are considered to be elite schools. In India, IIT, Indian Institute of Technology, provides the best technical education. I can say that very confidently, that we provide excellent quality of education and we are constantly striving to improve it. But at the same time the NITs are also working very hard, but the popular notion is that if you are an IITian, you are put into a different bracket. If you are from an NIT, you are not considered that capable by the people who hire you. It's unfortunate, because people in NITs are also doing excellent work and they are very well known within the country and outside the country. But this has a bearing. The system of education we have been exposed to has a bearing on how people perceive us and our qualifications. If I told you that I have a bachelor's degree in home science and I am talking to you about intercultural communication, how many of you would believe me? Maybe not very many. And I really do have a bachelor's degree in home science, but I also have a PhD in communication studies from a US university. So the qualifications that I have make me more credible, I hope. If I told you that I had had a decade of training in communication, you would probably believe me much more than if I told you that I had been observing human behavior. I don't have a degree, but I have been observing human behavior for the past 10 years. You would probably not believe me. But if I told you that I have been studying and here is my certificate that proves that I know about human communication, then I would become more believable. So the qualifications I have an impact on how people perceive me. Okay. Professional and personal experiences. Again, I'll give you a personal example here. If I told you that I belonged to a small town, that I had lived my entire life in a small town in Himachal Pradesh, and because of the work I did in that town, IIT decided to hire me, and here I am professing my expertise in intercultural communication. How many of you would believe me? Probably not very many. But if I told you that I had traveled the country, I had lived outside the state for many years, about 2 decades now, and if I told you that I have lived abroad and worked abroad, and so you would probably believe me a lot more. We assume things about people who have had a certain set of experiences. It's subconscious. In most cases, it is subconscious. There is a logic also to it. We feel that a person who has moved out has learnt different things from staying outside his own comfort zone, has learnt a lot about life and about work by interacting with people from different backgrounds, and that is the experience the person brings to the table when we interact with them. So this person could be considered more knowledgeable. But these things are subconsciously embedded in our thinking process, and these are the things that we assume when we are talking to people. These are the things that we assume when we are dealing with different people, and these assumptions form our intrapersonal context when we are designing our messages. The last thing on this list, at least on the slide, not in this list, but definitely on this slide, is occupation. Teaching, medicine were considered, traditionally they have been considered to be the noblest of professions. So, and a profession like law was not traditionally considered to be a very noble profession. But these days it is becoming more and more acceptable. Lawyers are some of the most brilliant people in the country and abroad. Now, at least in India, that was the popular notion maybe 30 years ago. Similarly, modeling or a career in the performing arts maybe a century ago was limited, was not entered into by people from the good, respectable families because of the supposed environment in a performing arts career, because of the odd hours these people kept, because of the lack of the invasion of privacy. But these days, these careers are considered just as respectable as any other career. Okay? So, the occupation we have gives us a different kind of, gives people a different impression about us. Let me take another example. In the performing arts, we assume that a person who is on screen will be physically fit, will take good care of their skin, will take good care of their hair, women, specifically women who are in the performing arts, will know how to wear makeup. So they will look much more presentable than a professor, because a professor's physical appearance is supposed to be khadi kurta and tattered jeans traditionally with a khadi bag, and a person in the performing arts spends a lot of time maintaining their physical appearance, and the occupation also has a bearing on how people perceive our level of interaction. A person who is a teacher will be more adept at, we assume that a teacher will be more adept at communicating. We assume that a teacher will be more comfortable with communicating. A teacher will be more will be better than, say, an actor at research, at finding out things. A lawyer will be the expert at finding out things. So we have these assumptions. A person in the armed forces or in the paramilitary forces will be one will be physically fit, and two will be stronger and sturdier than a person in a sedentary profession like teaching. We have all these assumptions about people coming from different professions. Okay? So, and these are the assumptions that help us define how we form our messages, that we feed to the receptor of the messages. We assume certain things, going back to Berlow's SMCR model. As the sender of the message, I assume something about the receiver of my message, and then I form my message according to what I perceive about the receiver of my message, and then I package the message in words enveloped in the meaning I attach to my understanding of the receiver of the message and send it across to the receiver of the message. And then the receiver of the message interprets these things from his or her own environment, within his or her own environment, based on his or her assumptions about me and my creation of the message, my reasons for making that message. Now, I would like to end this lecture, let's move on to international communication. Just one small point here. International communication refers to, the nationality refers to geopolitical boundaries. So, international communication refers to communication with people from a different geopolitical background. And at this point, let me give you some input on why we study intercultural communication. According to Martin and Nakayama, we study intercultural communication because of the impact of technology on human communication. Technology has made human communication very available to everybody in the rest of the world. So, the boundaries have shrunk and technology has brought us all together. There is mobility and migration, there is diversity and social heterogeneity. We are more mobile, we move to different places, we interact constantly with people from different cultures. There is self-awareness, we see ourselves from the eyes of very different people, and those things have a bearing on how we interact with our environments. And there is we have our notions about universality and relativity. So, what is universal, what is relative? We will discuss these points in the next lecture. So, I want you to think about these. Now, there is one more thing that I want you to really focus on, and that is that can communication in a business setting be anything but intercultural? Going back to the previous slide, just look at the slide on sources of difference. You look at this slide, and when you see the slide, please think about whether communication in any sort of business setting can be anything but intercultural. And that is what I want to leave you with. That is the food for thought for the next lecture. Thank you.